Welcome, thank you for coming. I'm going to sit down now.
I'm going to shut that, David, just so we can hear you a little better.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is David Olson. I work at RE/MAX Results with the Twin Cities Property Finder team. And the Twin Cities Property Finder team, RE/MAX Results, and R&R Constructions are the ones that are hosting this. And I want to, first of all, point out Bob Rayberg and Kim Schmidt with R&R Construction. Thank you. Every 2 months we do a get-together like this. It's networking and talking about something that we can collaborate on. And in August, we're going to be talking about building rapport, because so much of our real estate business is set on building relationships. We'll have a whole separate topic for that. But today we're talking about relocation. We're really excited to have John Colby and Doug here with us. And instead of me introducing, why don't you guys kind of tell us who you are and share your story of how you got into real estate and kind of what you do. Some of us already know you, some of us have only seen you on the stage. This is kind of a more intimate way of hearing more of your story.
Sure. You're it. Comment. Okay. So I'm Doug McElrath, Director of Relocation at RE/MAX Results, and I have been in the relocation world for about 20 years now. And it's the career that I guess I never knew about, and I don't know anybody who's actually decided they want to go into the relocation industry. It's one you kind of work your way into. But I had started out as a property manager a long time ago, and I thought I was going to build my fortune by someone was going to pay me to learn how to manage property. And what I found out over 3 years is that I couldn't stand it. Phone calls all the time, and nobody's ever calling you to say, "Attaboy." That's for sure. So one day I was managing a property for 3M in Edina, and my contact was a relocation company. I had no idea really what they did or how they worked or anything like that, but I so desperately did not want to be a property manager anymore. Then they said, "Well, we're hiring at our company." So interviewed. About a week later, 2 weeks later, there I am working in relocation, and it's been the best career that I never knew about, and I really enjoyed it. So half my 20 years I've been on kind of the relocation management side. So those are the companies that, the 3Ms and Cargills, they outsource their relocation business to. So I managed their moves and things of that nature. And then the last 10 years I've been on the broker side as a relocation director. So that's how I got to today.
And what's your best car?
My best car, that's a tough one. My best car is a car I bought when I was 21 years old, and I still own it today. It's a 1960 Corvette.
Nice. I just drool over it.
Unfortunately, it's never been an issue in my marriage or anything like that. I've never had to sell that to get furniture, because my wife enjoys it as much as I do, and my 22-year-old son now drives it more than I do. So, yeah, that's cool. Thanks.
That's risky.
I started in the real estate business so long ago. Maybe you can relate to me a little bit. I'm not sure. I got licensed in '77. I started selling houses full-time in '78. I was in management with a brand for a few years after selling, and then my late business partner and I started RE/MAX Results in 1986. So we're approaching our 31st year as a RE/MAX broker, and I love the business. I love the sales executives. I love the challenge. It's always changing. It's always something new. Some days you go home at the end of the day and you just want to bury yourself under the pillows, but by the next day I'm always interested in doing it again. So I guess I'm hooked, and we'll do it until... There's one person in our company that's worked for me for many years, and she used to be my right hand. She's now a recruiter, and her name's Lynn Pham. And Lynn Pham's job is to analyze me to see if I'm lucid. So once a week, she has to see if the cake spittle in the corner of my mouth, or if my tie looks a little weird or something like that. And so Lynn Pham has been designated the role of saying, "It's it, John, go home." And then she goes to Brenda Tusshouse's office and goes, "I sent John home, you're in." And so we've got a succession plan set up, and we've got somebody in charge of that. So as long as I can get past her and not be too goofy, because my memory perhaps isn't as sharp as a tack, but what the hell, you can't be perfect. So that's how I got here.
And for those, most of us are familiar with RE/MAX and RE/MAX results, but there's the global RE/MAX, which has got over 100,000 sales associates in 100 countries. And then there's RE/MAX Integra, which is kind of like a territorial, and then there's individual franchisees. And so John owns the largest RE/MAX franchisee, or is the most successful, I can't even say it.
Both. We're the most successful and the largest.
There we go. Perfect. So that's a pretty awesome accomplishment.
Thank you. And it's as a result of a lot of people in the room. That's how the gig works.
What's your favorite car?
Yeah.
My Dodge Hellcat.
How many horsepower does it have?
707. That would be my favorite car.
It's great driving in the winter on ice.
You know, I haven't driven it yet this year, so you know, I got to get it out eventually and abuse it.
Before we get super specific with relocation, can I ask you guys what you see the Twin Cities real estate market doing? Maybe from a realtor standpoint or a brokerage level, how do you kind of see things transitioning, or how this rest of the summer and maybe the next couple of years are going to unfold?
You know, I can only speak from the relocation standpoint, or I will. You know, this year is kind of on par with last year. So 2008, obviously, we're kind of down at the bottom. And, you know, we've slowly risen up in relocation activity since then. The last year probably kind of peaked, and then we've kind of held the same this year. You know, budgets are kind of coming along. People are getting the money to make the moves, things like that. And so in terms of the general activity I see, it's pretty similar to last year. I mean, stable and steady.
As a broker, we had 1 month, April, where we didn't beat last year. And the first time in probably 5 years where we didn't beat year over year. And it wasn't by much, but it just was all inventory based. And so it isn't a question of whether the market's better or worse. It's for approaching July, it's relatively strong, but anybody that's in this room that's a sales executive knows we don't have enough houses to sell, and so that's really what caused the slowdown in April. It wasn't the economy, it wasn't the interest rates, it wasn't the typical things that caused the market to react. It was just the inventory. And if you ever want to hear me get on a soapbox, I'll explain to you how municipalities are killing us by not making space for affordable housing. And we don't have townhome and condo options either for people living in first and second ring suburbs to move out of their new hope house into a one-level condo or townhome that's affordable. And so we're beginning to become a market where you've always thought about how crazy it is when an entry-level house in California is $800,000, and obviously we're not there yet, but we're going in the wrong direction for buyer affordability, and it's some of it's as a result of the legislation that has made it easier to sue people who build townhomes and condos, but it's also municipalities and the fees they tack on, and their unwillingness to allocate some land for affordable owner-occupied housing. It's not just providing subsidized housing or apartment buildings. We've got to give opportunities for first-time home buyers, and so beat on your politicians if they want your vote on that.
I've heard some of the key things to pay attention to when you're watching the market is actually new construction. This is one of the first groups that actually feel the press of the economy changing. Would you guys agree with that, or do you think there's other key things as agents we should kind of be paying attention to as we're evaluating what the market's doing?
I think it's the unemployment rate is the most important thing to look at in the marketplace. I think that tells you the overall strength of the economy.
Right, and that certainly taps into relocation.
Great. Could you guys kind of give us a brief overview of maybe the history of how the relocation business has kind of evolved over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it got its kind of foothold probably after World War II. You know, expansions going on. and companies are hiring and they need talent that maybe they don't have locally, so they need to just kind of spread the net out further to bring people to their companies. But then it really kind of formalized in like the late 60s and into the 70s. And then, because a lot of companies used to do it internally, so they had their relocation department in the corporation with the staff that helped the transferees. That is not so much the case anymore. Now, it's all outsourced primarily to relocation management companies, and that really kind of got formalized in the 70s. So then the relocation management company does everything basically for the transferee. So they are, they're doing a title search when they're selling their house. They're helping them find the agents to sell their home, helping them find the agent in the destination to buy their home. They're coordinating the van line service. They're reimbursing their expenses. They're funding their equity when they take their buyout or when they sell their home. So they've become, the one-stop shop for relocation activity. And that's really the model since, like the 70s through today.
From a brokerage standpoint, there's more than one level of relocation. There's agent-to-agent referral base, why you go to national events and the RE/MAX convention. The amount of business that you're able to get from agent to agent is very significant. And then there's the new window of Zillow-like activities where people are out looking around and they may not be making a corporate move, but they are looking to relocate to a different reason, a different area for a variety of reasons. And then there's corporate relocation, which has become so specialized, and it's really shut out the average real estate agent because the corporations will only deal with a certified professional with a long-term reputation. So it's really interesting. It is not only some of the corporations that Doug represents, they would not use RE/MAX results without Doug. Now they love that Doug's with RE/MAX results because that gives him an infrastructure, but they're not dealing with me with those leads. They're only dealing with him who knows their lingo, their language, their system. We all know that it's a fee-based system and we all hit our heads against the wall over that, but that's the cost of life. But without Doug, that part of the relocation business would not exist for RE/MAX results or any other brokerage. It's become very specialized, and I don't know if the right term is formalized, but it certainly is structured, and that they have very high expectations for accountability and reporting that's not necessarily in the wheelhouse of the average sales executive.
Yeah. And it used to be that you could, before they really relied on the relocation departments, I mean, as a real estate agent, you could go to the corporation or you could go to the relocation management company where everything's been outsourced to and create a relationship with them, and they would place the referral directly with you. That's kind of how it used to be. But today, they just really want to go to the relocation department, place it with that relocation director, whoever takes the incoming referrals. Then they've got kind of a one place where they've got, they can hold you accountable. So if there's ever an issue, they call me first, not necessarily calling the agent to resolve the issue. So they want one source of accountability. Now they just prefer to place it through the relocation department. So it's not as easy. Doesn't mean you can't create relationships. One way I see the relationships being created is an agent does a great job selling a home, or they do a great job helping somebody find a home, and they were not a requested agent, but they did such a great job, and they've done a great job over a couple of transactions that the relocation company now starts requesting that person. Not because they even know the transferee or anything like that, but it's like, John did such a great job selling the house, we want John to work with this next person. So that's kind of the new way to get in. By doing a great job. Yeah, it is hard, but I do see that happen.
So showing up at the local business in town with donuts and trying to connect with the CEO, maybe that worked back in the day to build a strong...
Right. Certainly for the larger companies it did. Now, I mean, there are companies that kind of maybe fly under the radar that are small, that maybe are moving 3 or 4 people a year, that a relocation company isn't. necessarily going to spend the time marketing to, that you could create that relationship. The other thing that I've seen, and it's worked successful a few times, is that, you know, as an agent, maybe you've got a relationship with a corporation in town, and maybe you know, like the HR director or something like that. So, case in point, I have one of our agents that knew an HR director at a large scientific company, and we weren't currently doing any business with them, but he had a neighbor in the HR department. We got on a conference call with that neighbor and the relocation company and the actual client, and an hour later they were saying, yeah, they had RE/MAX results to the mix. And so for that individual, I said, okay, you still got to pay all the fees, but you've got first right of refusal on that business.
Yeah,
Because we didn't have that line of business until you created that relationship.
what you're referring to is analyzing your sphere group, because you know how much we beat up the concept of sphere group marketing. And so if you've had a successful transaction with a relocation client who just you got at an open house or stumbled upon, that's an in into that corporation. And then the better in is if you know somebody in a key management position who can give you access to that. And so I'm not saying you couldn't cold call that person the way you described, but it's very, very unlikely that they're going to give you the time of day. You're going to have to go back and work your sphere group to get into some of those places. The cold call would be very, very difficult. I know what happens when a vendor cold calls me. I mean, they're just never going to get to me. I'm never going to talk to them.
Right.
I don't. And if I like them, I forward the call to somebody else to dust them.
Right. And if I get, sometimes I get a call from a relocation management company where one of our agents has called them trying to introduce themselves.
Right.
And then the relocation management company calls me and says, would you talk to X?
Right.
Because they called us.
It's just the way it works now. But your point is valid, and it's not a zero opportunity. It's just a little bit of a harder opportunity, and one that it's better if it's sphere group based.
It's like a mom and pop kind of shop. That might be a different exception versus a Cargill or Target or.
Still hard to cold call.
Right. And I would argue maybe, is it even a good use of your time?
Right.
You know, would it
Still
be better to
very,
work your
very-
sphere
Yeah.
and get a, what we call
Win-win.
regular
Yeah.
transaction, and, you know.
Sure. Is there any misunderstandings that you think real estate agents have about relocation?
You know, misunderstandings, I mean, I don't know about that. The misunderstanding might be that I hear commonly is that this is a past client of mine and they're being relocated. Why do I have to pay these fees? And that's because they're being relocated. That's why you have to pay the fees. I think that's, I mean, I don't know if that's a misunderstanding, but that's the most common thing that I hear from agents. And then if you explain it, you know, it all makes sense and you're getting the opportunity to work with them again. Yes, you're paying fees, but it's better to get something than nothing, I think. Yeah.
Any other misconceptions you think real estate agents have, or maybe even relocation companies have about agents?
Well, I don't think so. What Doug says has some accuracy, and simply if the client is getting the relocation benefits, then you're going to have to pay the relocation fee. If the client doesn't want any relocation benefits, and I guarantee you they want the relocation benefits, then you're going to pay the fee. I think that some of the misconception can be how big the market is, and that it's not a major segment of our market share. It can be an important segment of our market share, and like you described, that you've been successful because you have quality spec homes like this. And so if you're a real client whose hair's standing on end and they want to get into the marketplace and they see this house and they go, why is that a school's? We're buying it. And so there is some desirability, but I think over the years I've always had a thought that a lot of our sales executives think there's more, quote, relo people than there actually are in the Twin Cities. And not that we're a negative market. I mean, clearly we're not Chicago or New Jersey or New York, but we are a smaller market compared to a lot of places. And it's just, if you go back and look from a broker standpoint and check the source of business, it's a very, very small percentage of the business that is actually somebody who's moving as a result of a job change.
You know, if I could kind of go back to referral fees and things of that nature. So again, I go back to when I started about 20 years ago on the relocation management side, managing moves for corporations. At that time, we could charge fees for just about anything we did. So I'd open a new file for Northwest Airlines at the time, you know, $1,500 fee goes off to Northwest Airlines. We order the van lines, fees charged to that, you know, title search, everything had a fee associated to handling an expense reimbursement. And then it got very competitive, and relocation companies really wanted the business of corporations. So they started kind of doing, I can't even remember the term, but kind of a negative bidding system. So they're going to bid on 3M's business. They start at X, and they're on a conference call, and every relocation company is going, okay, I'll do X minus 1, okay, I'll do X minus 2. And all, you know, they just keep bidding themselves down, down, and down, and down, to the point where they practically do it at no cost now to the corporation. There are some fees, but nothing like it was before. And that's why, through their relocation policies, they've almost mandated to a company that the relocation company has to collect a referral fee on these moves, because that's how the relocation company is going to make their money. So it's about 75%, I've seen on some reports, 75% of the income of a relocation company comes from the referral fees. You know, then they have some other ancillary business where maybe they've got van line commissions, they've got, you know, maybe something worked out with a title or temporary housing, things of that. But their fee structure has changed so much, and that's where we get into these referral fees that range anywhere from now from 35 to 42%.
What would you say some of the unique skill sets, I mean, education, things that realtors need to have in order to be good at relocation?
Well, I think you need to be organized. Clearly, you have to like to do paperwork, because there's a lot of paperwork involved with relocation. So those are kind of the two things right off the bat. I mean, if you don't want to do paperwork, if you don't want to send in a report every 2 weeks, even though you think it's ridiculous to send in a report every 2 weeks, you have to do it. You have to be able to kind of follow their rules. And once you figure out their system and their rules, I think it becomes pretty easy going forward. I think you have to be a leader, obviously, but you also kind of have to, I don't know, be kind of a humble servant as well to the transferee, because they are, I mean, think about this. I think the average transferee, from the time they're given the job offer, they've got 13 days to decide if they're going to take that move. And after they decide they're going to take the move, they have on average 5 weeks to get to the new location. So what's that? 7 weeks from, I mean, I can't imagine uprooting my life in 7 weeks. But you're talking, I'm a guy who lives in the house that he grew up in too, so obviously that'd be a hard decision for me. But anyway, I mean, there's stress. There's, you know, if there's a spouse or a partner in the old location, they've got to, you know, they might have a great job and they don't want to give that up. And then there's kids and schools perhaps and all these kind of things. So you're helping them recreate their lifestyle when they get here. So they're really relying on you, maybe more than just the average client, you know, because now you have to, you know, you might have to find the orthodontist for the children and things like that. So you really have to be willing to kind of go the extra mile, I think. But those are some, you know, some of the skills and things that are necessary to be successful in the business.
So the goal is really to make the transaction as stress-free as possible. Be very assertive and thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
Like work with
Right, and you have to be willing to pretty much, if it's a buyer coming in town, you better clear off those 3 days. Because you can't just say in the morning I can meet with you, but the afternoon I've got, you know, some other appointments, and then, you know, Sunday morning not so good, but Sunday afternoon before you get on your plane I can take you out again. So you need to pretty much drop everything for them.
It's like being a baby doctor.
Right.
Great. How would you say RE/MAX Results is uniquely positioned to help realtors work with relocation buyers?
Well, I think it's because our sales executives on average have 11 years experience, and on average sell 23 homes, and then we have 39 offices across the Minnesota, Wisconsin area. So we have better salespeople in more locations. And you know, the one thing I wanted to add to your first question, and it is that relo is not for everybody. That you have to have an aptitude, and you have to make a time management decision because of the referral fees. You have to decide if your time could be better spent with a different profile of a client. And you have to really be into satisfying that person, because that's where you'll add a rock star to your sphere group. So if you are really excellent and have a great personal relationship and help these people transition into the marketplace, as some of you know, I have an ex-wife who works for us, and she did a lot of relocation business, and every client that she ever sold an out-of-town house to, we took downtown Minneapolis to dinner before their closing. And that's the kind of relationship she built with those agents, with those customers, and they just became such a part of her sphere group and her business model. And when I was a real estate agent, that wasn't my profile. I would have not wanted to do that as a real estate agent. I would have rather cold called people who own duplexes and listed their duplexes. That was my business style, and hers was to just take care of these people, and she built a whole mega business on that, and that's how she would get into some corporations and stuff like we talked earlier. But it isn't necessarily for everybody. It is not going to match everybody's skill sets. You're going to have some patience, and you're going to have to be able to have some empathy. As Doug suggested, your whole life changes in 7 weeks. Buckets. That's a weird deal.
Right. And I think to your point, when you're spending all the time with people, and they're just moving here and they don't know anything about the area, and have any friends other than work friends, a lot of the agents I know, they become your friend now.
Absolutely.
They're your friend for years and years and years. And again, another kind of little offshoot is if you do a good job on a relocation, I mean, I hear it all the time that, I don't have any numbers on it, but you know, you're going to get another 1 or 2 transactions off of that are not reload deals.
Correct.
So
that's the good news. If you're the right kind of person that can get that kind of feeling.
Yeah, but and I think back to your original question, what makes RE/MAX results unique in terms of relocation is we have a relocation director, which is not the case for every RE/MAX around the country.
Good point.
And so it makes easy for relocation companies to work with RE/MAX results because of that. And to John's point, great agents to work with, without a doubt. I mean, that's very fortunate that way for me. And then we can offer consistent service from Duluth and Superior to Rochester, Austin, Minnesota, and everywhere in between where we have offices. So there's a consistent delivery of service. So they can call me in Eden Prairie, place a referral in Duluth or Superior, and know that they're going to be taken care of just the same way they would be if they were in the Twin Cities.
I mean, ultimately, what I'm hearing you guys say is to be in relocation takes a high level of skill and time commitment that can be years long to develop. And so for an agent to say, hey, I'm a relocation specialist, versus saying, hey, we have a specialized relocation director, and they're the ones managing these relationships with relocation companies.
I highly recommend that they get their CRP designation. Some companies are very interested in that, and I think it gives you a better view of the lingo and the feel and helps your, I just think that that's a good idea.
And that's a certified relocation professional. That's it's put on through the Worldwide Employee Relocation Council, which is an international group of relocation professionals that RE/MAX Results is a member of. RE/MAX Results is also a member of the Relocation Directors Council and the Minnesota Employee Relocation Council. So we're involved at all those levels.
And as Doug said, that's atypical for a RE/MAX.
Right.
It's very atypical.
Because I don't mean to be negative, but because I was on the relocation management side, we typically avoided RE/MAXs because it might be the broker owner might have 1, 2, or 3 offices, and now it's up to me as the relocation counselor to find an agent in that market, and it just was more, laborious kind of procedure. And then you hoped everything went well, and you hope people cared, and you hope you got your commission or referral at the end of the deal. So,
How would agents use this information when they're meeting with the seller on a listing appointment and they're competing against somebody else who says, I'm a relocation specialist? Is there a way to kind of dissect that and show the seller like, hey, it's good that people have certification, however, here's how we're different with our...
Well, I mean, I think that if you're representing a seller, I think there's a certain relevance to what you're going to be, because if you look at the statistics of what are the odds of you selling your own listing, I mean, it's just such a small statistic. So I think it's more important that you reference relocation as part of the big picture, in that how your company will get exposure to their property and how your company works with the relocation experience and how you'll display the property, and that it will get every opportunity to be exposed to that, but you don't have to rely on just me. We're the #1 real estate company in the world. We do more international relocation than anybody, which in a lot of cities nowadays is crazy part of business. I have friends in the RE/MAX business in Dallas, Texas, and 20% of their sales in downtown are coming from South America. I mean, I don't even understand it. And so I think that you deal with that by, you have your own resume on who you are in your presentation, but I think you reflect on the relocation component as part of your overall market plan, how you're going to expose the property, and know that there is nobody in the Twin Cities that will expose your property any better to the relocation market than we can. How can they? If we're the largest and the best, how can they possibly expose your property better than we can? And so maybe they can do it as good if they're lucky, but I guarantee you they're not better. That's what I'd be saying.
Sure. Do you have any stories of...
And then I get to tape.
Any stories of agents you know who tried to do relocation and have just screwed it up?
I don't. I mean, honest to gosh. I mean, I've been at results come end of August. I've been at results for 8 years, and
And it doesn't seem much over 7.5.
no. And so, I can't. Honest to gosh. I mean, I can think of maybe 1 or 2 occasions where things kind of blew up, and the only reason it blew up it was communication. That was
Boy,
it.
is that a good point.
Yeah. Otherwise, you know, knock down wood. I've been blessed with great agents to work with.
I do know of sales executives that will choose not to take referrals because of the referral fee. And they make a time management decision on, here's how many clients I have to work with. Is it worth paying for this client, even though this client will lead to more business in the future? And there is no way to quantify that decision. That's not a right or wrong answer. I probably would take the lead knowing what I know about the business and about the price point of the relocation buyer. But 25 years ago, I might not have, because I was in a different market and a different niche. So I couldn't answer that specifically for the individual. But the key word there, that if you really want to hang on to something, it's how you communicated with the client, and it goes back to the first step of the sales process, how you established rapport with this person. You have to be timely, and when you say you're going to call them, or when you say you're going to have a packet to them, it's got to happen just like that. You really have to be on it, and I think that's the key thing. If you wanna walk away from this with only one thing, walk away from it with that comment, because that's what screws up many a real estate deal.
And thinking with a transferee, they might have a partner or a trailing spouse. Be sure to, when you're communicating with them, be sure to CC the other one, because oftentimes the one's off doing this, and the other has no idea, and then all of a sudden that creates
Big deal.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah.
I've heard of people, they get like a call from someone relocating, they'll pick them up at the airport, show them some houses, maybe a couple different times when they're in town, and then the lead will tell them, oh, we have an agreement with our relocation company that would not allow us to use you.
I would argue that they could use us every day of the week. So I do get that from time to time. So there are, just to know, there are networks out in the relocation world that the relocation company might also, the parent company might also own some real estate brands. So they naturally want to funnel their relocation business into their real estate brands. And so I will often, more than once a month, will call one of those companies because our agent's been told, well, I can't work with you because you're not in our relocation company's network. And all I need to do is call the relocation company because we are in their network. It's just their way of trying to, keep the business to themselves. And so I have not had one time where I was not able to get our agent to work with a relocation company.
Slightly different perspective. I'm not showing anybody houses twice that hasn't signed a buyer contract. Nobody on the face of the earth is getting in my car the second time without signing a buyer contract. I'm not spending that time with anybody. I don't care if it's good old George that I grew up with. He signed a buyer contract because I don't want that dummy going to an open house. I'm not showing people houses without signing a contract. So do your job, signing the contract.
See, we have a past client, and they love us, and all of a sudden we see they're moving, and they had an agent come in and from the relocation. How do we avoid that situation?
Well, I mean, I guess it would have been nice if you'd known that they're going to have the move, I guess, and then could have had that discussion with them, like, we can help you, and maybe they're, maybe get in early enough where then I can get involved if there's any resistance.
I think you just identified something you should be mailing your peer group periodically to explain to them the relocation process, and despite what your company may say, our relocation department is quite likely going to be able to service them. So if they say you've got to use a certain agent, please notify me first, and I'm confident that I can overcome this.
Right.
Should we call you, or?
Well, but you should first communicate that with your clients on an annual basis or a biannual basis, and then absolutely, then you get him to make the phone call.
Right, because then I want you to tell your client, I can work with you, and the client, I would suggest the client call their relocation counselor and say, hey, you know what, I think we can work with this person. And then I'll talk to the relocation counselor as well. And
that's a great question, and
I hate when that happens.
Yeah.
And as Doug suggested, it's not always factual that they can't work with us, but they're given that shtick, and that if we do a little work, and the chances that Doug's going to know somebody at that company are relatively high, as weird as it sounds. Even if it's PHP or one of those evil companies, he still has contacts at it.
Any questions from you guys that you want to ask these guys? Or final thoughts that you want to share about relocation?
It's good business. It's business comes at a price, but it's good business. I think that, I don't know, I've been trying to think about the people that do well at it that I know, and they never think of referral fees or anything. They get they get more pleasure almost, I think, out of helping these people, being that person here to introduce them to the Twin Cities, be the tour guide when it's 5 below in January and they're telling them this is a great place to live, and selling them a house. So I don't know, so it's something like, if it's kind of what John was saying, do the math, see if it makes sense for you. But it's more than just the money, I think, for the people who really like it. It's a little spoke on their wheel of business, and that they really get a kick out of for some reason, and they just enjoy doing it.
And like being an ambassador.
Exactly. Right.
How many people know one of our sales executives named Linda Mulligan? I would consider her to be the best relocation agent I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And if you go back and look her annual income for the last 10 years and how many 7-figure transactions she's had from the relationships she's built, and she is so into the process, she becomes a zealot advocate for her buyers and sellers. And it's like Doug was suggesting, it's a level of intensity that somehow generates because of the stress and difficulty of the relocation transaction. And if you ever want to take a minute with somebody who's excelled at that business, try to get some of her time. Because she's just done an amazing job building. It's not her only business. She has a great sphere group, but boy, it's a part of her business that's went on for years and years. And she's made it work, but she really becomes an advocate for her client. Not that we all don't. I'm not suggesting that, but man, oh man, they just sense something about her, and she's going to get that business when they move. And if the corporation says, oh, we're using so-and-so now, her clients go, no, you're not. If I'm moving to Tuskegee, we're using Linda Mulligan. And so some of that is your clients being advocates for you, that they're just telling their corporations, you know, you want me to move, I'm working with somebody I like.
And John brings up Linda. So I mentioned earlier the Minnesota Employee Relocation Council. So they meet about 6 or 7 times a year. They'll have an annual conference, and then they'll have some just kind of educational sessions. And so I would suggest maybe looking into that if you're interested in relocation, getting a membership. It's like $200 a year, $250, something like that. But when you bring up Linda, I mean, Linda and I have both been very involved in Merck, but she's been on committees and boards, and that's where, you know, if you do get just a little sliver of somebody's time, you know, somebody from US Bank might be there, or Target or whatever on your committee, so you can, again, you can't really go after them for the business there, but they get to know you as a person and how you work and your, you know, what you bring to the table. So I would suggest looking into Merck as a, you know, if somebody's interested in relocation and getting involved. We have about, you know, we have a number of agents that belong to Merck and go to the meetings, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Great, well, thanks, guys, really
All right.
appreciate it.
All right.
There's still coffee over here, and again, if you walk